police have the powers to issue on-the-spot fines of up to $1,000 per person to anyone caught breaking those rules. This morning, our cameras captured some people stepping over police tape, flouting the rules and swimming at closed beaches here at Coogee and also at Gordons Bay. Now, people in New South Wales are, of course, living under the toughest restrictions in the country.
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to Media Watch. And last week we showed you the media publicly shaming rule breakers, and of course they're still at it. But now the police are doing it too, especially in New South Wales, where Sky News captured this extraordinary moment in Sydney on Tuesday.
5 police cars started driving onto Rushcutters Bay Park. They didn't walk around, obviously wanting to keep their own social distance. But if people weren't, basically if they weren't exercising, if they were picnicking or sunbaking or napping, they were approached by police, as you can see there, and asked to leave.
Not surprisingly, those pictures provoked widespread media outrage.
Breaking now, Corona crackdown. Police state, officers raiding parties to enforce new rules. Blitzing parks are ramping up the campaign against COVID-19.
And days later, with fines handed out to 2 men for talking on the street and another to a man in Newcastle for eating a kebab on a park bench, the Daily Telegraph took aim with this front page.
Police state.
Cops warned to calm down tensions.
And it backed that up with an editorial inside warning,
Pointlessly hostile or aggressive policing at this stage may serve little purpose other than to annoy people, who in the main are simply trying to get by during a time of great stress.
And that advice applies to the media too, because filming and pouncing on people who are getting some fresh air should not be the role of the Fourth Estate. Only don't expect the Daily Mail to give it up, because it's obviously enjoying its newfound role as COVID cop, publishing 18 photographs of people innocently outside at Sydney beaches last Friday, and even contacting the police to alert them to the photos. Meanwhile, New South Wales Police Commissioner Mick Fuller was making no apology for how police powers to fine rule breakers are being used.
If one person's allowed to sit in the park, everyone's going to want to sit in the park.
Those special powers will last until the end of June, and New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian and Scott Morrison warn the lockdown could last 6 months or more. So it's no surprise that as the virus spread starts slowing, some commentators, like John Ruddock on Sky, are protesting.
This is all way overblown. This is all completely unnecessary, particularly in Australia, because anywhere in the Southern Hemisphere, look at the data, hardly anybody's dying of coronavirus in the Southern Hemisphere.
Libertarian think tank the IPA has also been railing against the restrictions, getting coverage in The Australian and putting out this video on social media.
The time to start ending this lockdown is now. But our response to the coronavirus outbreak has decimated our society, ruined thousands of lives, turned Australia into a police state, and worst of all, put hundreds of thousands of Australians out of work.
The Australian's economic correspondent Adam Crichton has also been making a similar argument with posts like this on Twitter.
Government is happy for 15,000 Australians to die each year from cigarettes. But 21 die of coronavirus and it takes on World War II deficits, induces a depression and puts millions under house arrest. Could the response be excessive?
Excessive it may well be, and debate it we certainly should. But there's one key fact missing here. A big reason why so few Australians have died is that measures to suppress the virus have worked so well, as the PM explained on Friday.
Had we not taken the measures we'd already taken just 12 days ago, there'd be 5,000 more people with the virus right now.
News Corp's Andrew Bolt accepts Australia has done well, but he's also used the low death toll to argue we must get back to work within 2 weeks.
Our death toll is still, as of midday yesterday, just 16. All old and many already very sick with illnesses such as cancer. That's a mortality rate so far of under 0.4% among just those we know are infected.
And Bolt went on to say the dangers have been exaggerated.
Dr. Anthony Fauci, Donald Trump's top coronavirus advisor, has just co-authored a study suggesting the virus could be even less deadly. If we assume that tests exclude the many people who don't even know they're sick, Fauci says the coronavirus may ultimately be more akin to those of a severe seasonal influenza, which has a case fatality rate of approximately 0.1%.
That is 1 in 1,000. And is it really no worse than flu? Most experts dispute that. And it's not quite what Fauci's study found, which was that COVID-19 may ultimately be more akin to a severe seasonal influenza than a disease similar to SARS or MERS. And that is much less comfort because SARS and MERS killed roughly 1 in 10 and 1 in 3 of those infected. And for now, COVID-19 is looking scary too. In Italy, it's currently killing around 1 in 8 of those who've tested positive. In Spain, it's around 1 in 10. And in the US, where it's currently killing 1 in 35, even Dr. Fauci is forecasting up to 200,000 deaths. Meanwhile, in all those countries, the virus is overwhelming hospitals and health workers and piling up bodies by the thousand. It seems like those that Australia wants to avoid, as New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian told the media on Thursday.
We have to maintain our vigilance. We are at a very critical phase. And the reason why, of course, we've imposed these restrictions and the reason why we're going through this is to make sure our health system can cope when there's more people being admitted into our ICUs.
So, with new cases in Australia now slowing, should we relax? Modelling from Sydney University suggests that if we do, the virus could take off again. And Australian Nobel Prize winner, Professor Peter Doherty, agrees, telling the Australian that COVID-19 is just as deadly as the Spanish flu and 20 times worse than the seasonal flu, and telling Media Watch that Andrew Bolt's 2 weeks
would be much too soon to relax the current restraints. Hospitals may be near ready soon in the sense of numbers of beds, but that's not true for ventilators and possible therapies.
And Doherty added,
it's true that the let her rip strategy will get us through this much more quickly. It will also kill a lot of people, including many exhausted doctors and nurses.
Now, to be fair to Bolt, he's not arguing to just let it rip. While he wants us back at work, he also wants us to protect the sick and elderly who are most at risk. And he's not alone in saying the lockdown must be eased. Professor Peter Collignon, an expert in infectious diseases, told Media Watch that we'll need tough restrictions for at least 6 months and maybe 18 months until a vaccine is available. But he also said,
we need to find a compromise. If we lock people up in their houses for 6 months, they'll just go nuts.
And he had a similar message for readers of the Canberra Times last week.
You are safer outside than inside. I do not see how anyone's going to get this virus if they keep 2 metres away from someone. And I don't see how anyone's going to get it if they sit on a park bench.
How to manage the lockdown from here is a difficult choice. How many people are we prepared to sacrifice to save the economy? Or how much damage to the economy can we tolerate to save people's lives? It is an important debate and one the media needs to run. But it's vital not to minimise the dangers or pretend the choice is easy. On Thursday, for example, Andrew Bolt told Sky viewers,
the chance of you having been one of the Australians so far who's been infected is only 1 in 5,000. And the chances of you having been one of the dead is 1 in 1 million. The chance of you having been one of the dead if you're actually infected is 1 in 200, which is not good, but you first have to have got infected. And the chance of you being one of the dead if you are under 60 years old is 0. 0.
Andrew Bolt is not an expert. Professor Tony Blakely is, and he sets out the maths like this. Let it rip and 120,000 Australians will die. Protect the sick and elderly, but relax restrictions, and 60,000 will die. Add in new drug treatments for those infected, and perhaps 30,000 will die. He may be wrong, of course, but it's not 16 or 21 or today's figure of 39 deaths, which would indeed make the choice much easier. Meanwhile, whatever the death toll turns out to be, there's no doubt the lockdown is crippling the economy and destroying jobs. And there were more signs last week that the media is a casualty.
News Corp is hitting pause on the production of 60 community newspapers across New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland and South Australia. They include the Manly Daily, the Wentworth Courier and the Diamond Valley Leader. News Corp blamed rapid declines in advertising money due to the pandemic.
From this week, News Corp will stop printing 60 of its local newspapers as the advertising dollar from retail, real estate, bars and restaurants dries up. And while the digital editions will continue, the future of those newspapers is now in serious doubt, as are the jobs of many reporters and photographers. This is because, even before the pandemic, local papers were struggling, as former News Corp CEO John Hartigan told the ABC.
A lot of these publications have been effectively on life support well before even the droughts and the bushfires, the knock-on effect even for suburban publishers, let alone this virus.
So, with the virus shutting down the economy, those papers never stood a chance. And that's ironic because our thirst for news is greater than ever. The Sunday Telegraph Deputy Editor Claire Harvey told The Drum,
our audience numbers are growing exponentially, particularly in local areas. People are very, very interested in local news, and we'll continue to provide that to people.
But however great the demand, there's sadly no guarantee that print editions will return if revenues come back. As news industry analyst Ken Doctor told Neiman Lab about America's local press,
no newspaper that drops print days of publication will ever add them back. Humpty Dumpty won't put the 20th century newspaper back together again. There can be no return to status quo ante. The ante was already vanishing.
We hope he's wrong. But News Corp was not the only one last week to take a hit. Seven told staff to take a 20% pay cut until June and shift to a 4-day week, while 10 asked employees to reduce working hours and take leave, and 9 will temporarily stop printing some of its titles, including Sophisticated Traveller and Good Food magazine, for obvious reasons. And today, more grim news with reports that regional broadcasters, Prime, Win and Southern Cross Austereo, are so cash-strapped they're looking at closing down news bulletins and they're seeking government help. Meanwhile, some journalists who do still have a job are sadly finding themselves with much less to cover.
Holly, what's happening in the world of sport?
Very little, Roger. Very little. Back to you.
Joking aside, things are pretty grim at the sports desk.
The AFL is off. Well, for the first time in 59 years, there will be no surfing contest at Bells Beach this Easter.
And it's confirmed tennis's Jewel in the Crown cancelled, the first time since 1945.
That the Tokyo Olympics and Paralympics will be postponed until next year.
Coronavirus has claimed another sporting code, with the NRL suspending the 2020 season after just 2 rounds.
Tennis, soccer, rugby, golf, AFL, League and Formula One, the cancellations just keep on coming. As former soccer boss and ABC Managing Director David Hill told the ABC last week,
it's a full-blown crisis. I've never seen big sports in Australia challenged as they are now.
So, to fill the void, for now at least, everyone is raiding the archives, including Fox Footy, which has hours of airtime every day to fill.
That's right, we're recalling the greatest games with all new live commentary, analysis, interviews and more.
And the older they get, the better they were.
How good was footy in those days? Loving this AFL Live recall on Fox Footy.
Meanwhile, the Herald Sun is also in rewind mode.
Top 20 roos of the modern era.
Rewind. Jason's big day out. The day Dunstall booted 17.
Also, taking us back in time are the entertainment reporters who, with cinemas closed and productions stopped on most movies and big TV shows, are taking us down memory lane.
Let's just have a look at The Blues Brothers. It's one of the greatest films of all time. 30 years ago, we were invited to take a trip to Twin Peaks. Let's take a look.
On 9, they're also into greatest hits, as long as they're on 9-own's Stan.
At number 10, it's Dawson's Creek, more than 2 decades since it first premiered. 9th on my list is Grey's Anatomy. And now for my number 1 pick of the best classic shows on Stan. Yes, that iconic guitar riff says it all, doesn't it? It is Seinfeld.
Going to be tough if they've got 6 months to fill. How many times will they be able to shuffle that list? Maybe they should take the lead from Time Out, which has rebranded its Sydney and Melbourne magazines Time In to help us all through the lockdown. Meanwhile, most of those TV reports are coming from home studios, and as expected, it doesn't always go to plan.
Leading the pack today is Rihanna. Her corporation has given $1 million in grants toward COVID-19 response, and her mate Jay-Z is matching her with another $1 million.
Profits come in many shapes and forms, and we've seen,
Looks like Nelson is frozen in time. That happens, doesn't it?
It does. All right.
We'll just chat amongst ourselves.
We'll give him a bit of a slap to wake him up.
It is a sign of the times. Let's hope we can all be unfrozen soon. And that's all from us tonight. You can read more on our website. And don't forget Media Bites every Thursday on your favourite social media platform. We are taking an Easter break, but we'll be back in 2 weeks. Stay safe.